These are the schools of thought in sociology. And this is just a note and a podcast of my understanding of each of the schools of thought. So within anthropology, we had three schools of thought with functionalism, cultural materialism, and structuralism. So you'll see a similarity with in sociology is we have functionalism. And when you think of functionalism, you have to think, what is the function? What is the purpose? So to understand a society, we must study how the society works to maintain the needs of its members. So say our class average is 55. A functionalist will look at all of the issues to see what isn't working. Is it the technology? Is it the teacher? Is it the student's work ethic? Is it the home schools? Is it bandwidth? What institutions aren't working for the success of the students? Emile Durkheim is considered to be the father of functionalism, as I talked about in part one, and he wrote the book called Suicide. And he said that when someone commits suicide, that it's the ultimate barometer or measuring stick of a sick society. And we have to look back and see what institution went wrong with that individual. Was it the education system? Was it our social assistance programs? Was it the healthcare system? Was it religion? What was it? And so they'll ask, what systems in society provide stability, and how effectively do specialized institutions meet the overall needs of society? So does our education system meet all the needs of society in Ontario? Does it adequately prepare students for the real world? Those would be questions that a functionalist would ask. Again, looking for the function. Neo-Marxism is our second school of thought, and it comes from Karl Marx. And if you remember from part one, Karl Marx was the author of the Communist Manifesto, and he said eventually that a capitalist society, a free market economy, will eventually alienate the working class. He essentially said that there's two groups of people. That there's the bourgeoisie, who are the owners of production, or who are the richest people in society, the 1%, and the proletariat, the working class. And he said most government policies, most economic policies are put in place to benefit the bourgeoisie and to alienate or to oppress the proletariat. Now, this is very left-wing, a very left-wing ideology. But if you look at an issue like the rising cost of tuition, tuition in Ontario has gone up something like 300% in the last 20 years. So who can really afford to go to university? Is it the kids of the bourgeoisie? And can the proletariat actually afford to go without drowning themselves in debt? Well, the answer is yeah, we can still go to school, but then we have a bunch of student debt. The average in Canada is, I believe, around $25,000. And when you become a worker with debt, according to Marx, you are a good worker. You can't quit your job. You can't complain about the working conditions because you have so much debt. So you become a good worker. And Marx ended the manifesto by saying the workers of the world will unite and overthrow the current power structure that we have. And the Winnipeg General Strike, people thought that this was happening at that time. Others thought with the Occupy Wall Street movement and the Occupy Toronto movement that that was also a movement to overthrow the current power structure. So he predicted that this will happen and there'll be some sort of revolution. I don't know what modern economists would think. So the typical questions here would be, in whose interest do the institutions of society work? And what are the causes of alienation among society's members? So alienation is how you feel like an outsider, how you feel like you don't fit in. The third school of thought is symbolic interactionism. And this is the idea that we attach certain meanings to certain actions, and I'll explain that shortly, and that the brain intervenes between what we observe and how we act. So this is a little confusing, but symbolic interactionists believe the following. I am not what I think I am. I am not what I am not what I think I am. I am not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. Okay, so to explain that, because it sounded a little muddled, you behave based on what you think others think of you. So, for example, in my grade 12 Families in Canada course, for the most part, I think the students, think that I'm fun loving, I'm loud, I'm enthusiastic, I'm sweaty, all of that. So because I think that, that's how I behave. Because I think that's how they see me, that's how I behave. Now, if I go into a grade 9 class, and I covered a grade 9 French class last week, and they didn't know how to take me, and I came down with the iron fist because they thought I was this old school dictator in a way. So that's how I acted. Some far off relatives would never see the enthusiastic, energetic, kind of quirky side of me. So when I'm around them, they think I'm, the younger, quiet version of myself. So you act based on how you think others see you. Okay, so that's a little complicated, but I'm fascinated by these ideas. Now, we also attach certain meanings to social actions. So let's take example of, in a traditional classroom, a teacher going up and touching a male, let's say it's a male teacher, and the male teacher touches a male student on the shoulder. Well, our brains could interpret that social action in a number of ways. One, it could mean, okay, let's get focused. Two, it could mean he's offering sympathy, he's offering encouragement. Three, it could be just the teacher needs to lean on something. Or four, it could mean that something that pushes the limits of the professional boundaries between student and teacher. So we interpret that action in many different ways. You could also look at it in terms of a first date kiss. It's interpreted differently by different people. Do you kiss them goodnight because it's just a way of saying thank you? It's the social norm. You think this is going somewhere? We'd like to see you again. Is it just thanks for coming out? I don't want to see you again, but this is the social convention. Or is it, oh my gosh, we're going to get married? So a first date kiss can mean a bunch of different things. And in different cultures, we interpret different social cues in different ways. So in Western culture, if we are at a restaurant and we leave a tip to the server, that's the social norm, that's encouraged, and we're thanking them for good service. However, if we went to a place like, I believe, Thailand, and we tipped, it's a scene of, the server would take that as a sign of disrespect and a sign that we are better than them and we are flaunting our wealth in front of them. Then there's different cultural norms about leaving food on a plate, or different cultures where you're supposed to leave it as opposed to you're supposed to finish all your food. So it can get complicated. So that's the idea of symbolic interactionism. Think about the symbolic value. Next one is feminist theory, and it is essentially looking at how women are mistreated in a given society or a given topic. And they say that a lot of systems are sexist and are dysfunctional. So if you look at income statistics still to this day, you're going to still see men out earning women, especially in the top 25 paid careers in Canada. At the lower end, the 25 lowest paying occupations, we've come towards some equality. If you're looking at composition of upper management and corporate executives, you're going to see a disproportionate number of males compared to females. Because feminists would say, or feminist theorists would say, that we live in a male corporate culture. That if I was conducting an interview for a job and we had a male candidate and a female candidate, both had similar resumes, both were from Harvard, both had MBAs, why would I, for the most part, tend to hire the male over the female all the time? Well, corporate executives, according to feminist theorists, would say that the stereotypes out there that males are more committed to the workplace than family, and that females are more committed to family than the job. And the idea that females within 9 months could produce a baby and would be off long term. That's the stereotype that persists, and something feminist theorists would say we need to knock down those barriers in order to move towards a more equal society. Now, I would think most feminist theorists would agree that we have made progress in society, but that we're not quite there yet. Out of this, I think there has been a stream of masculinity theorists or masculinity studies, and there is some concern over male academic achievement in Canada. As of 2010, women received 70% of all university degrees in Canada. So, and that could be a way that'll eventually trickle down and maybe equal its way out in the corporate sector and corporate leadership. So the typical questions are, why have most societies historically undervalued women's work? And can all people reform social institutions together? Or must women act single-handedly to create gender equity? You'll notice in this handout I'm missing a couple of quotation marks, so please excuse me there. Inclusionism is the last school of thought, and sociologists must recognize the ethnic diversity within societies by studying the experiences of all ethnic groups and rejecting the urge to judge through the eyes of the majority. So normally, the eyes of the majority would be white, heterosexual males. How do we see issues from people outside of white heterosexual males, likely from the middle class? And they would study, again, we could look at the ethnic composition of corporate leaders in Canada. Years ago, I guess last year, I taught a Native Studies class, and we looked at the composition of corporate leaders in Canada and what percentage were from First Nations descent, and it was ridiculously low. So what are some of the solutions to this? Well, they might suggest the ideas of affirmative action, where you have hiring quotas or hiring standards. If you ever saw the movie Crash, it alludes to that a little bit. Very, very controversial mechanism, and one we might be able to talk about later on. Personally, and this is just personally, I like what the NFL, the National Football League, does, is that anytime there's an opening for a head coaching position, the team must interview at least one minority candidate. So if the Buffalo Bills had a head coaching vacancy, they must hire at least one non-white, not hire, interview one non-white applicant. So that's not forcing them to hire an ethnic minority, but it's giving an ethnic minority a chance. I think that's called the Rooney Rule. Okay, so that's inclusionism, including, involving all and not just the majority. So those are the schools of thought within sociology, okay? And we're going to apply these shortly.